All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to our 12th grade college planning night, specifically the session geared towards those students who will be applying to four-year colleges. Just an FYI, this session was presented twice this past week, on Tuesday and Thursday of last week, to your students during advisory time. So for those students who were unable to make it, and if you're sitting there with your parents right now, this is where you're going to get your information about your four-year process. For parents out there, this is just kind of an FYI to understand how the process works and the different moving parts, because we're talking about the four-year application. There are several different steps to it, several different people that are involved in making sure that everything is done and done on time. So tonight we are going to cover who is involved and what each person's role is in this process. People we're going to talk about first are the counselors, and joining me tonight in this presentation are Ms. Veenstra and Ms. Samick Smith. They will be manning the chat and Padlet tonight, so if parents have any questions that you would like to ask during the presentation, you can put them onto the Padlet, and Ms. Veenstra and Ms. Samick Smith will answer them as we go along. The counselors are point people in this process, so it is important that your student make contact with them to help them walk through this process and make sure everything is getting done on time. So the major role is from the school counselor ourselves. We are a resource for your student through this process. The first thing that we've been doing and started this week, majority of the counselors have sent out sign-up geniuses to their seniors and asked their seniors to make an appointment with them. There are a few counselors that are still getting their sign-up geniuses up and running and should be up by the end of the week. These appointments with the counselors are very important because we will sit down with your student and do the following things. We're going to review their college lists with them. So we're going to take a look at what schools they are applying to and look at it realistically and see what their chances are going to be for getting into the schools on their lists. As a caveat to that, I want to let you know that the counselors do not tell a student not to apply to a school. Students are free to apply to any school they want. However, during this meeting, one of the things that we will do is talk about the chances of them getting accepted to the schools on their list. And if we see that a student has picked highly selective schools and does not have a backup school on their list, we will suggest that they add some schools just to make sure that if they don't get into their first choice or second choice, they still have options when this process is over. We will also be there to answer questions that they might have about the application and how to answer certain things on the application, and also to show the students that are resources that are available to them. We do have other people within the building that can help them through this, and we're going to be discussing everybody's role in just a minute. Our primary responsibility, though, is submitting the students' transcripts, the school profile from Lake Braddock, writing our letters of recommendation, and completing the secondary school report. Those things are all part of the application, and I'll discuss those in more detail as we proceed through the evening. And throughout the year, we're going to be offering workshops through the College and Career Center with Ms. Hunter on different things related to the application process, including application workshops on Monday afternoons, where students can come in and sit down with their computer and work on their application, and counselors will be there to answer any questions they have as they are answering or beginning their applications. Ms. Hunter is our College and Career Center specialist, and she has a few specific duties that she'll be working with our students who are applying to four-year schools. First and foremost, she is the one that arranges for the college rep visits in the Career Center. These are the reps from the different universities and colleges that come to meet with our students. Most of them this year so far have been set up as in-person workshops. So these reps will actually be coming to Lake Braddock to meet with the students. There are a few that have been set up as virtual, and students will have a place in the Career Center to log on and meet with these college reps. They will sign up for the college rep visits on Naviance, and I'll discuss that in a minute about how they go ahead and do that. The importance of this, I can't stress enough, the importance of meeting these actual reps who come from these schools. These college reps are the ones who will be reading the applications when they get to the individual institutions. So for students to be able to make contact, face-to-face contact with these reps is very beneficial. Unfortunately, some schools, and I'll use some of the Virginia schools, like, the reps from Virginia Tech or UVA or George Mason who come to Lake Braddock, and there might be a couple hundred students signed up to come visit that rep. Chances of making one-on-one contact are pretty slim just because of the sheer number of students. But your student may be applying to a school where only a few students from Lake Braddock, or maybe no other students from Lake Braddock, are applying to. And when they come visit that rep, they're basically going to get a one-on-one interview. And I can't state enough how far that can go when the student actually submits their application for admittance, and that rep remembers speaking to them face-to-face. So Ms. Hunter will be setting up these visits. She has many of them scheduled right now through October, November, and December. That's the major time of the year when these reps come, and she will keep adding to the reps on a weekly basis so students can check to see what schools they're interested in and if their reps are coming. She also handles the scholarships and financial aid portion of Naviance. So throughout the year, she will be updating our scholarship database, where she will be putting scholarships that are available to Lake Braddock students and Fairfax County students. These scholarships can range anywhere from a few $100s up to several $1,000s. Some anybody can apply for, some have certain criteria in order to apply. So there's not very many in there right now because we are still so early on in the year. But as the year progresses, more and more scholarships will be added to that database, especially during the winter and spring months when the scholarships really kick in. Some other things, she does have contact for jobs for the summer, and during the school year, employers will contact her about looking for students. And she also has information on apprenticeships and internships if you have students that are interested in doing some things outside of school. So she is a wealth of information, and she is there to help your students through this process. So a little bit about what we're going to talk about tonight. We're going to talk about the actual college application process, and then how you go about requesting your transcripts and requesting letters of recommendation. And finally, we'll talk a little bit about looking for financial aid and scholarships. All right. All right, so let's talk a little bit about what's happened over the last year, because COVID has had an impact on college admissions. And it's important to understand from what we're hearing from the college side, what they're seeing on their end and how they're going to be viewing the applications for this year. This past year, with the class of 2021, almost all colleges across the country saw an increased number of applications. In talking with the college reps, they attribute it to the fact that many schools went test optional this past year because students did not have access to taking the SAT. So as test scores were something they really weren't looking at. So students then thought that maybe they'd have a chance of getting into some schools that maybe they wouldn't have in the past. So there was an increase in applications across the board. This did cause, at some schools, some disruptions as far as the number of applicants they were able to admit to their college. There are some colleges in Virginia that told us that they had so many applicants that students in years past that would have been admitted ended up being waitlisted because they just did not have the space on campus. Because if you remember how this process works, there's only so many spots in the freshman class, and they have to reserve some of those spots for students from out of state. So the Virginia colleges in particular, they had so many in-state students apply that they just were not able to take anybody. So increased applications did have a big factor on who was admitted and who wasn't. One of the things the colleges have told us is they understand over the past year that students were not able to get as involved in things as they have in the past. A lot of activities that's on school grounds were canceled. clubs or different organizations and sports. So they understand that there may be a lack of things on the student's resume for junior year. They are going to take that into consideration when they are looking at the applications. As part of the Common application, which is something I'll talk about in a minute, the Common App added a COVID impact essay question as one of the essay questions that students can answer. The essay question deals with how COVID has directly impacted the student and their family. So the college admissions rep wanted us to really get the word out that this is not just a general question about how students feel about what's happened with COVID, but they want students to really elaborate on if their family was affected in a particular way. And it could be, a family member losing their job or a family member becoming ill. It could be any of those things. The colleges want to know that as part of that essay. And finally, Fairfax County had to update their school profile that we send out to all the colleges to let them know about the virtual learning and how long students were on virtual learning and what happened with our grading scale and the changes that the county made in order for COVID not to have such a serious impact on our students. So all of those things are issues that are being addressed at the college level, and colleges understand that this past year has not been a normal year. Naviance is a tool that our students have been using since 7th grade. The middle school counselors began working with them during 7th grade, entering goals and so forth. And we've been working with the students as they progress through high school. This is one year where students are really going to be diving into Naviance and using it for various things. The first would be to sign up for the college rep visits. On Naviance, there is a place for college visits where they are all listed. And if a student sees a college that they are interested in, they can click on sign up and it will print them out a pass, and that pass will allow them to get out of class to come to the Career Center to meet the college reps who are coming for visits. You can use Naviance also to go in and check on your transcript status. So when you've requested that your transcripts be sent to a particular college or colleges, you can actually log into Naviance and see when those transcripts were actually sent out of the student service office. So you know what date that they actually were sent to the colleges. There's also the scholarship information, which I alluded to earlier. There's a scholarship database that Ms. Hunter will keep adding to throughout the year. And students will have access, like I said, to scholarships that range from several $100s to several $1,000s. And those are independent scholarships that come through Fairfax County and the Lake Braddock. There are some that are just for Lake Braddock students. And then if your student is looking for internships, apprenticeships, or jobs throughout the school year or over this next summer, those will also be posted in Naviance. So everybody has access to that. Students have it, parents, you have your own login access, and students and parents can access that through Schoology. All right, so what are the colleges looking for? And has any of this changed since COVID has made its appearance a year ago? Colleges are telling us that they are still looking at students through the holistic approach, which means that they are looking at several factors, not just one or two, when they're trying to decide whether a student will be admitted. And we've ranked them here according to what the college reps are telling us they look at first. So they will be looking at the student's course selection over the past 4 years and the rigor of that selection. How often did a student choose to take an honors or AP or dual enrollment class? They will be looking at the final grades that the students received in those classes. And notice we're not saying GPA here, we're talking about grades only. And the reason we don't say GPA is because GPAs differ depending on what school system you're coming from. The GPA in Fairfax County is not going to match up with the GPA coming from, say, a county in California, because everybody's grading scale is different, and schools and school systems award extra points or extra quality points for honors and AP that are different than what Fairfax County does. So the GPA that you're seeing on your student's transcript is comparing them to other students in Fairfax County, not students from across the country. So the colleges are more interested in the final grades that the students receive in the courses. Test scores are a part of what they consider, but I'm going to get into that in a minute also. Many colleges this year are still remaining test optional. So that means students do not have to submit test scores, and that will not be part of their application. Sorry about my dog in the background. She just saw something out the window. They will also be looking at the other things like the essays, the teacher and counselor recommendations. They will be looking to see what honors and awards a student has received over their 4 years of high school, their extracurriculars and leadership, and finally, the thing that we like to call the X factor. And the X factor is that thing that only the colleges know, that we don't know, and the student is not going to know. And those could be things that the colleges are looking for specifically. Maybe they're looking to start a new major on their campus and they're finding students that are interested in that. So they'll look at their applications a little bit different than everyone else. It could be that a student is a legacy, has had other family members attend that institution. They could have a specific talent that the school is looking for. And I always bring up, a few years ago, there was a Virginia college that had never had a marching band before, and they were getting a marching band started. So they let the counselors know, if you have any students that are interested in marching band, we would love to have them apply to our school, and we'll be considering their talent first before we look at their academics. So it really depends on the college and what it is that they're looking for that particular year. So we never know what that X factor is going to be, but every year there tends to be something that many of these schools are looking for. All right, as far as applying to the four-year schools, there's three basic ways to actually apply to the schools. The first will be through the individual college or university's admissions page, where they will have an online application portal, which means a student will log into the admissions page, bring up the application, do the application, and submit it. Probably the most popular at this point, and in recent years, has been the Common application. The Common app is just what it says. It's an application that is accepted by over 900 colleges and universities. So a student only has to do the application once, and then they designate what schools they want that application sent to. So it's easier on the student. They're only completing information once, doing their essay questions, and then it goes out to all the schools that they are interested in. And finally, the third would be the Coalition app. The Coalition application is similar to the Common app. It's different in a few ways, where they let students actually upload pieces of work that they have done over the years, so the admissions office can see what they have done as a high school student. So it's a little bit different. It's only accepted by about 300 colleges right now, not as many as the Common app, but these are going to be the three major ways that your student will be applying to college. So getting a little bit more specific on the Common app, for students who are doing the Common app, they will need to invite their counselor to their Common app. And there are two places on the application. There's a place that asks for their counselor's name and email address. And then if they want their counselor to write them a letter of recommendation, under the recommendation tab, there's also a place to put the counselor's email address and name. Please make sure that your student is using our fcps.edu email addresses. Those tie in directly to our Common App accounts. We do not use the FCPS Schools Net. It will not tie into our Common App accounts. And we made sure the students knew this the other day when we met with them. Then we receive an email from Common App saying that a student has invited us to be part of their application, and they show up in our Common App account. For the Coalition, students can go ahead and do the Coalition application, but they are not going to invite their counselor. We are unable, due to restrictions through Fairfax County, we cannot upload documents to the Coalition. So the student can still use the Coalition application. We will just submit their documents by another means, usually through Naviance, through eDocs. We will send to the college that way. The only issue with that is that students will not be able to see in their Coalition app that we have uploaded their school records. Okay, so for Coalition, the students do not need to invite us, but they can still use the Coalition as their application if they wish. All right, so there's always a big question about when to apply, and it's important that we understand the different terminology that goes along with the applying. There is, first of all, early decision. Early decision is a binding agreement that you are making with a school that if they accept you, you will attend. You will then withdraw your applications from any other school that you have applied to at that point. Again, it's a binding contract. So the student, the parent, and the counselor have to sign an agreement at the beginning of the process, telling the school that they understand the ramifications of applying early decision. You can only apply to one school early decision. You cannot apply to multiple schools early decision. The biggest drawback to the early decision agreement is that most colleges are going to give you that notification whether you've been accepted or not before you know anything about financial aid or scholarships. So for students who really are going to be depending on financial aid or scholarships in order to go to schools, early decision is not a good idea, because again, if you sign that agreement and they accept you, you're bound to go there no matter what kind of aid they give you. So early decision is popular for the student who knows that they have found their school, the school that they want to apply to, and that money is not going to be an issue, that they agree to attend that school if they are admitted. Early action is a little different. That just means that there's an early deadline. You have to have your materials in a lot earlier than the regular deadline, and they let you know earlier. Usually by January, February, they will let you know if you've been accepted early action, but early action is non-binding, which means that you can apply to as many schools as you want early action, and you get to choose which school you want to go to. All right, so you can apply to as many early actions as you want, and then make that decision come May 1st when you have to let the colleges know where you will be attending. You're free to apply to one school early decision and multiple schools early action, but if you get accepted to that early decision school, you will then have to withdraw your early action applications. There are a few schools that are very upfront and honest and tell students that you must apply either early decision or early action if you want to get in. There are some schools that it's very hard to get in if you apply regular decision, and for those schools, it usually depends on what major you pick. We did have a Virginia school. I actually went and visited in person, and I had the rep tell me that they take the majority of their freshman class from either early decision or early action. And after that, it's on a space availability only. So if students apply regular, it would depend on whether there were still spots in their specific school or major that they were applying for. Rolling admission means that a school will accept applications at any time. You can submit your applications at any time, and usually within 3 to 4 weeks after submitting your application, you will get a decision from them. And they will continue to do rolling admission until their freshman class is full. Okay, so there are a few schools that still do rolling. Priority usually means that students need to apply by a certain deadline in order to qualify for scholarships. So it's important when your students are looking at their deadlines, when they're looking at when they want to apply, if they want to qualify for scholarships, make sure they know what that deadline is that they need to apply in order to be considered for those scholarships. So when the students begin this process, there's really 4 major pieces of information that they're going to need. First of all is the application. Secondly will be test scores if necessary, and I will explain that in just a minute. Third is a teacher or counselor recommendation, and that's only if the colleges require them. Some colleges do not, and I'll be discussing that a little bit later. And lastly is their actual transcript from Lake Braddock that shows their progress over the last 4 years. Now, those things don't all have to arrive at the institution at the same time. As your materials get there, they will open up an admissions file for your student. So it's imperative that the application get there by the deadline that the college has submitted. But some of these other things can come after the fact, even if it's a little bit after the deadline. So our transcript person is actually Ms. Hashmi. She works in our student service office, and she will be the one that you would be requesting transcripts through. And I'm going to explain that process in a minute. She works every day from 9 to 3:30. Once she gets a transcript request, she then lets the counselors know so we can begin the process as far as getting all the materials together. Now, there are several different types of transcripts. The first is an official transcript, and that's the one that the colleges are looking for. This one is signed by a Lake Braddock official and has a raised Lake Braddock seal on the transcript, which states that it is official. That the student gets the first 3 of those official transcripts for free. And then anything beyond 3, there's a $5 charge for each one. Okay, so depending on how many schools your student is applying to, you will be charged $5 for anything beyond 3 official transcripts. There's also the unofficial transcript. The unofficial transcript is not signed by any official. It does not have a seal on it, and there's no charge for an unofficial transcript. So your student can actually go to their counselor and ask for a copy of their unofficial transcript if they need it for something. And I bring this up because there are a few schools out there that are what we call self-report schools, which means that as the student is doing the application, they are not going to require that we send them an official transcript. They are going to ask the student to list all of their courses and all of their grades. Some will give the students an opportunity to upload an unofficial transcript, and they will not come back to Lake Braddock and ask us for an official transcript until the student has been accepted. So schools like Virginia Tech and Penn State that are self-reporting, I think University of South Carolina is another one. Students just go in and put in their grades and their courses, and they don't need an official transcript when they submit their application, but we will send it later if they get accepted. In February, every student receives a mid-year transcript. These mid-year transcripts will be uploaded and sent to all of the schools that the student has applied to. The county will also update the seniors' GPAs at mid-year. So that's the only time that this is ever done, is during senior year, when they update the senior GPA so the colleges can see where the student stands midway through their senior year. For many students who have applied early decision or early action, at this point, they've already gotten their acceptances. So the mid-year is just a review for the college to have them look at your senior year and make sure that you're doing well. For students who are still waiting to hear at that point whether they've been accepted to a school, this is going to be the last set of grades that an admissions office is going to see before they make a decision. So one of the things I stressed during the workshops last week to the seniors was that you need to keep doing well and keep your grades up through mid-year of senior year, because those grades will be seen by the schools that you are applying to. And finally, the final transcript. At the end of the year, the seniors will be filling out what's called a senior survey. It's done usually around the beginning of May. In that survey, we ask the students to list the schools that they applied to and what their decisions were. And then we ask them where they want their final transcript to be sent after graduation. And depending on what school they put on there, the day after graduation, their final transcript will be uploaded and sent to the school that they will be attending. That way, they will be officially enrolled in that school, and that school at that point would contact them about signing up for classes for their freshman year. So again, the final transcript will automatically be sent just to that school that your student tells us they will be attending after graduation. All right, so as part of what we send out something called the transcript packet, which consists of various pieces of information. So in order to get that transcript packet, there are 2 steps that need to be completed first. First, all students must complete the transcript request form. This request form is located on the Lake Braddock website under High School Student Services. There's a link for transcripts and forms. It is a Google document. A student needs to do a transcript request for each school that they are applying to. Okay, so on this form, it will ask for the school, it will ask for the address, it will ask for the type of application the student is doing, whether they're using the Common App or Coalition app, or if they're using the school's own application. It will also ask if they are doing early decision, early action, regular decision, and so forth. And it will also ask if a counselor recommendation is needed. So nothing can be sent out until that request form is complete and submitted. We also need on file the form that we call the consent to release student records. This form gives us permission, even if the student is already 18 years old, this has to be on file. Once we get this form, then we are free to submit a student's scholastic records to any college that requests it. Now, one thing I do want to bring up about the consent to release student records form, on the bottom of that form, there are two statements. I waive my right to see my recommendation letters, and I do not waive my right to see recommendation letters. Students are often confused on which of those they should choose. And the information we get comes straight from the colleges. So I'll tell you what the colleges tell us. If they see a student has waived their right to see the letters of recommendation, they will take that letter of recommendation more seriously than if the student checks that they do not waive their right. Because if they've waived their right, the college, as far as the college is concerned, they feel that that is confidential information that's going straight from the counselor or teacher to the admissions office. If a student has checked that they do not waive their right, the college has no idea if the student had some input on how they wanted their letter of recommendation written, so they don't take it as seriously. So we tell our students, you should check, I waive my right, so that way the colleges know that that is privileged communication between both the counselor and teacher and the college admissions office. Inside that transcript packet, there are several things that are included. First is the current senior transcript. So that is going to be the transcript up through the end of junior year. So it will have grades up through the end of 11th grade. It will have the senior schedule attached to it. So there will be no grades for senior year, especially if a student is applying in the fall, in the October, November, December timeframe. We do not have grades yet. We do not send grades by quarter. So it will just be the senior schedule, so the colleges can see what courses the students are taking as a senior, and the weighted GPA. Okay, so those are the three things that are included on the transcript itself. Then we will send something called the secondary school report, which is basically an overview of the senior class of Lake Braddock. So it will talk about what the highest GPA in the class is, what the lowest is, what the average test scores are. And then it'll give us a rating scale where we rate your student compared to their classmates on things like academic achievement, extracurricular achievement, and so forth. So that secondary school report will go along with the transcript. And finally, the school and FCPS profile. So the profiles give the admissions office a bigger view on Lake Braddock as a school and Fairfax County as a community, so they can see what is average for this area. I will tell you that for Virginia schools, that really doesn't matter. Everyone understands Fairfax County. So it's pretty easy for an admissions office in Virginia to evaluate a student coming from Fairfax County. It does help though for students who are applying out of state, and maybe there is a college that is not as familiar with Northern Virginia or Fairfax County. It gives them a better idea of what kind of education the student received while they were here and what their competition was amongst their classmates. And finally, we will send a counselor letter of recommendation, and you see on here it says if required, and I will talk about that in a minute as far as what goes into our letter and how to know whether it is required or not. So in the transcript packet, two things that it does not include: Fairfax County does not rank students and has never ranked students as long as I've been here, and I've been doing this for 26 years. I think it was probably around 30 years ago or more that Fairfax County did away with the rankings. So what they do ask us, the colleges ask us to put the students in deciles. So we can tell a college a student fits in the top 10%, 20%, and so forth, based on their GPA, but it will not give a numerical ranking. Nor does Fairfax County provide unweighted GPAs. And this usually isn't an issue. There will be some applications, in particular for the military academies and some of the ROTC scholarships, where they ask us for unweighted GPAs. Fairfax County just puts the weighted GPA down. We do not differentiate between weighted and unweighted. So whatever GPA is on the transcript, that is a GPA that will be sent out to those places that ask for unweighted GPAs. Teacher recommendations are not part of the transcript package, okay? And I'm going to talk about that when I get into the recommendation letters. Once we get the packet together, the most common way of submitting it is electronically. So if your student applies through the Common App and has invited their counselor, the counselor will upload the transcript packet to their Common App account, and then it will be up to the college on the college's end to download it by the deadline that the college is looking for. If your student is not using the Common App, but is a school that will accept things electronically, we will send the transcript packet through Naviance, through something called eDocs. So everything will be sent electronically to those schools. And believe it or not, there are still a few schools out there that still like to get things via snail mail. So if we're required to, we will mail the transcript packet to a school if they do not accept electronic documents. Just remember that submissions to these schools are considered on time if they are submitted by the application due date, okay? And that can mean if it's electronically, as long as it is time-stamped by the day that the application is due, it's considered on time. If it happens to be snail mail or we're sending it through the post office, as long as it is dated and stamped prior to the deadline, the colleges will consider it on time. If after several weeks, your student is getting emails from the college saying that they still do not have their transcript, they should come by the student services office and tell their counselor and Ms. Hashmi, the transcript assistant, and we can call the admissions office and make sure that things have gotten there on time. Okay, so for the last year, colleges have really changed their requirement for SATs and ACTs because of COVID. Students did not have as many opportunities to take the tests. They were not able to take it multiple times like most students do when they take those tests. So many colleges have considered SATs and ACTs to be optional, not only last year, but they're doing it again this year. So one of the things that I am suggesting to all of the students, and I brought this up the other day, was that they go in online to every school that they're applying to, look at their website and find out what their test policy is for the year, because it's on an individual basis. There's no one size fits all as far as this statement goes. So students need to know if test scores are being taken this year. Some schools have told us that they are not requiring tests for admissions purposes, but they may require tests if a student wants to be considered for scholarships, or if they're applying to a certain major within the college. Some of the departments within the colleges themselves would like to see test scores. So again, it's on an individual basis as far as the school is concerned. So please have your student look into whether they should submit test scores or not this year. Okay, so now we're getting to the letters of recommendation. And when you're talking about letters of recommendation, there's several things that we need to keep in mind. First of all, do the colleges that your student is applying to, do they actually want recommendation letters? Some schools do, some schools don't. And if they do they want them from certain people? Do they want them from a counselor? Do they want them from a teacher? Or can it be anybody, just anybody that knows the student well? How does the college want that letter to get there? Do they want it to be sent specifically to the admissions office electronically? Do they want it sent through snail mail? Again, All the directions for this will be on the individual college websites. Or do they have a specific form that they want the recommender to fill out and submit? Most colleges, I will say at this point, are fine with just getting a letter from a recommender. There's not really any specific forms. Some of the more selective schools do want us to use their recommendation form, and we will do that by downloading it and completing it and submitting it directly to the school. So the counselor letter of recommendation. First of all, the student has to request the letter of recommendation by submitting the transcript request form. Once that request form goes in, like I said, there is a spot on there where the student is asked, do you need a counselor letter of recommendation? Once that is submitted and we know that we have to submit, it will be something that we need at least 4 weeks turnaround time to get done. Okay, so most of the transcript deadlines for the colleges are at least 4 weeks in advance. So it's up to your student to look at what deadlines they have on the college side and count back 4 weeks in order to submit their transcript release form and let their counselor know that they need a letter of recommendation. In order to write the letter of recommendation, the counselors need various pieces of information. First is the student self-evaluation, where the student is asked several questions about their time in high school. The second is a parent questionnaire. Now, this is optional. Most parents will complete this questionnaire, but it asks you as parents, what are some things that you would like us to know about your student, especially during their high school years, some things that we may not know working in the school and only seeing them so often. And finally, the comment forms. Some counselors require these, some do not. So I would tell your student that they should check with their counselor on whether or not they need these comment forms. These comment forms are given to teachers who are not writing letters of recommendation for the student. So basically, it's a checklist and a few statements from a teacher telling what kind of student they were when that teacher had them in class. All of these forms can be found on the Lake Braddock webpage. I do know that all the counselors sent these forms out to their students both last spring through Naviance and again at the beginning of the school year this year through Naviance again. If a student has a problem accessing it or you can't find it, just email your counselor and we will make sure we get you the link. Both of the forms, the student self-evaluation and the parent questionnaire, are Google Docs. So you will complete them online and submit them. Once you submit them, they go to your counselor's database and your counselor will use them as part of their letter of recommendation. And then we also ask all of our students for resumes or a list of activities that they've done throughout high school. Again, it's pretty easy for us as counselors to know what the student has done in school, but oftentimes we do not know what students are doing outside of school. So it's helpful for us to get the complete picture before we write our letter of recommendation. Our letter of recommendation is very different from the teachers. So our letter of recommendation will talk about the personal qualities of the student, will highlight their academic accomplishments, will highlight things that make them unique compared to their students within their class. The teacher letter recommendations are done just a little bit different. The teacher letters are going to concentrate more on what that student was like as a student in the classroom. And that gives the colleges a pretty good idea of what kind of student they have coming their way if they admit them. For the teacher letters of recommendation, the first thing that the students always need to do is ask the teachers that they would like for them to write them a letter of recommendation. Several of our teachers have quotas. They will not write more than 15 or 20 letters in a year. So it's important that the students get to them and ask them for the letter before they meet their quota. Once the teacher says yes, they would be happy to write them a letter of recommendation. Then the student needs to put their name and address into the Common App or the Coalition app, and it will be sent directly to the teacher. Okay, the teacher will be notified that they've been listed as a recommender. The teacher will go ahead and do the letter of recommendation and submit it through either of those platforms, or in some cases, if a school does not use the Common App or Coalition app, the teacher can submit directly to the college or university that is requesting it. So make sure that your student knows whether they need a teacher recommendation, whether they need a counselor recommendation, or whether recommendations are not necessary. Some colleges have told us that they will not read recommendations even if we send them. And Virginia Tech is one of those schools. They have said that they do not read letters of recommendation. They just have so many applicants, they don't have time to sift through letters of recommendation. So even if we send them, they're not going to read them. Some schools like JMU would like only one recommendation instead of multiple. So the student can choose whether they want it to be their counselor or a teacher sending a letter of recommendation. And students are responsible for getting the letters of recommendation from their teachers. This is someplace that the counselors do not get involved. This is between the student and the teacher. Oftentimes we will get phone calls or emails from parents who will say, you know, this teacher was supposed to submit a letter of recommendation, but they haven't done it yet. Can you please try to track them down and ask them whether the letter of recommendation is? We cannot do that. We cannot run around the building asking teachers whether they've done their letters or not. So it's up to your student to contact the teacher and find out if the letter has been completed and if it has been submitted. So as far as the processing times, I told you that when we submit the transcript packet, we do it electronically. That is not going to be an instantaneous upload on the college side. It usually takes colleges 3 to 4 weeks to match up all the pieces of an application and then go on the student's account and reflect that they have received everything. So it's not something that happens overnight. So your students should be reading their emails from the colleges themselves to find out where their application status is and whether they have everything. You can check in Naviance, and Naviance you'll be able to see all the schools that your student is applying to, see when we submitted their transcripts to those schools, and then your student can go into their application portals with each individual college and check to see where they are in the process. Okay, that was probably one of the hardest things that I have to convince students is to set up an email just for their college things. And they should be checking that email almost daily once they have submitted their application so they can find out where they are in the process, because that's how the colleges will be communicating with the students. So just in summary, as far as what the student is responsible for throughout all this process, the student is responsible for actually completing the application and submitting those applications along with any application fees that the schools require. If a school is requiring SATs or ACTs, we do not have test scores at Lake Braddock, so those scores have to be submitted directly from College Board. So your student will have to contact College Board and ask them to submit their SATs or ACTs directly to the schools that they are applying to. Your students are also responsible for knowing the deadlines for especially scholarships. So if they are looking for money for college, they make sure that they apply by a certain time in order to be able to qualify for any scholarships that may come their way. And they are responsible for following up with the college admissions office, especially if they are getting emails from them saying that their application is incomplete. They should talk to the admissions office and find out what is there, what is not there, and then relay that message to student services if there's something that we need to resubmit to the schools. Okay. So as far as the transcript request forms and the counselor recommendation, again, I said at least 4 weeks. So we were looking at 30 days prior to your first deadline, your first college application deadline. So students need to know when those deadlines are coming up and work back approximately 4 weeks from that deadline. If something is submitted late to us and we don't have enough time to get it together, we cannot guarantee that things may get there by the deadline. So it's important that students know their deadlines and stay on top of things. I will tell you, I've been doing this for a long time. This is just a personal statement. We always get things there on time. As long as the students give us all of the information within the time period that we need it. We will do our best to get everything out on time. So as far as financial aid and scholarships, there's a couple things that have to be done to see if you qualify for these things. The first, we request that all families at Lake Braddock fill out the FAFSA, which is the free application for federal student aid. Even if you feel like your family may not qualify for any sort of financial aid, you must have it on file at most institutions in order for them to consider your student for either financial aid or scholarships. So that can be done beginning October 1st. You and your student are going to need to do that together because it's going to require you getting out your income tax records and uploading your income tax records. So make sure that that is accomplished as soon as possible after October 1st. There's also another form out there called the CSS profile, which is the College Search Service profile. This is required by some more selective institutions out there, and many private schools also require this. Unlike the FAFSA that basically just looks at your income tax records, the CSS profile dives a little bit deeper into your family's financial means. So they will be looking at the value of your home. They will be looking at any savings accounts you have, any money that you have put away for retirement and things like that in order to see how much your student may qualify for. So if you are applying to a school that does the CSS profile, make sure you get that filled out as soon as possible so that school can consider you for aid. That aid can come in several different ways. The most popular are loans, grants, and scholarships. So a loan is something that will have to be paid back eventually after the student graduates. Grants is money that's given to the student upfront, and it does not require repayment upon graduation. And most schools use scholarships as part of their financial aid package. Okay, so students sometimes get the impression that, oh, I can get financial aid and I can also get scholarships on top of that. At most institutions, like I said, they consider scholarships to be financial aid. So that will come as part of the financial aid packet. Many colleges have individual funds, especially private schools, where they have money to give out to incoming students. So if you get a financial aid package from a college or university and you think that maybe they can do a little bit better and offer you a little bit more money, you would need to contact the school's the financial aid office individually and discuss your situation with them and see what the colleges can do for you. We also have the Fairfax County and Lake Braddock scholarships, and I mentioned this earlier in the presentation. They will be available in Naviance. You'll be able to see them listed, and students are free to apply for any of the scholarships that are listed. And again, they can go from several hundred to several $1,000s, and those will be available throughout the school year, throughout their senior year. You can research on your own college scholarships and other ways of getting financial aid. I just want to caution, there are some companies out there that will tell you, hey, if you pay us upfront, if you pay us a few $100s, we will guarantee that your student will find X amount of scholarships. You should never have to pay for a scholarship service, so be leery of anybody who's asking for money upfront. There's enough information out there that's free for you that you should never have to pay somebody else to do the legwork. So be a little wary if a scholarship service asks you for money upfront. And finally, as far as the institutions go, students get contacted directly by colleges and universities if they qualify for scholarships or financial aid. So oftentimes students will submit their application, they will get an acceptance, and then upon acceptance, they will get another correspondence from the college that will ask them if they're interested in applying for the honors college or if they're interested in applying for a specific scholarship. And then the student can go ahead and do that and potentially get more scholarships or financial aid on the back end after they've been accepted. So that will come directly from the colleges and universities and go directly to your student as part of their acceptance package. All right. Now for our athletes out there, there's actually an extra step. If you are a student athlete who thinks they may want to play at the Division I or Division II level, there's a separate process that you have to go through in order for coaches to be able to ask you to come for an official visit and visit their campus and potentially offer you either an athletic scholarship or some sort of athletic financial aid to their institution. Division I and Division II athletes need to register online at the Eligibility Center, the NCAA Eligibility Center. When you register, they're going to ask for your test scores, and they're going to ask that your transcript from after 11th grade be sent there. They will look over everything that is submitted to them. Then they will let you know that you are preliminarily cleared to speak with coaches. And at that point, coaches are free to reach out to you and offer to bring you into their school for an official visit. We also ask for athletes, if you feel that a coach may come by to Lake Braddock, which we have on occasion, coaches will drop in and come into the student services office and ask to see the transcript of certain athletes. We ask that you complete a transcript request form, and on that form, you put college coach as somebody that has permission to look at your records. And that way, anytime a college coach comes in and asks for an official record, we are free to share your academic information with them. Okay, so for all parents out there, this is your time. Some final tips, some words of advice as you go through this process with your student. Remember, this is your student's process, so they should be the ones taking charge of this. And I know as a parent, and a parent who went through this process last year with a senior who is now off at college as a freshman, I know how tempting it is to want to take over the process and do things for the student instead of having the student actually do everything on their own. So for you, it's all about being a support, okay? Being open with your student, talking to them about where they are in the process and what things that they still have to get accomplished. It's also about helping your student find the best possible environment for them to flourish. Not everyone is successful at every college and university out there. So it's important to find a college or university where your student feels like they fit in. And it may not be a school that has a big name attached to it. We tend to fall into what we call the name game, where we're so worried about where our student is going to end up. And we just want to tell our friends what schools they've been accepted to. That's not always in the best interest of the student, okay? So make sure you are doing what's in the best interest of your student. It is your responsibility and should be to help your student manage their deadlines and know when their fees are due. That should be your major part of this process. There's going to be disappointments along the way. There will be letters that come out that say that a student has not been accepted, or maybe a student has been waitlisted, but there are going to be a lot of successes also. There's going to be those letters that come out that say your student has been accepted. So it's important to dwell on the positive and not on the negative through this process. It's important that you have a conversation, if you haven't already, with your student about your financial situation and what you can afford and not afford, and help them complete that FAFSA. There have been instances over the years where I've had parents call me after students have received their acceptance and said to me, they've been accepted and it's their dream school, but financially we can't send them there. We want you to call them into your office and tell them they can't go to that school. And I'm not going to do that. I don't know of any counselor that would do that. That's not our responsibility. You need to be upfront with your student on what is affordable and what is within your means as far as what you can afford, as far as the school that they are going to be going to. And please do not try to compare your student with other students. This happens all the time. Students start to get down on themselves because they are hearing from their friends or other friends or parents from other friends about where other students have been accepted. And if that student has not been accepted to a particular school, it starts to weigh on their confidence, okay? So it's better just to stick with what your student is doing and not worry about what other students and other parents are doing through all this. Again, you are the cheerleader. You are there to help them through all of this and try to stave off those urges to do everything for them. I remember several years ago, an admissions officer from one of our Virginia schools who told us that there was a student who could not understand. He was not hearing from the university on why he had been not accepted or not accepted. He wasn't receiving any correspondence. And when they looked into it further, what happened was his parent had actually completed the application for the student and put the parent's name and the parent's social security number on the application. So the application never got matched up with the actual student who was the one who was applying. So we don't want things like that to happen. Make sure it's your student who is actually doing their applications and completing all of the steps that they need to do. It's important that your student keep in touch with their school counselor. Remember, seniors are not the only group that we have. Each of us has about 80 seniors, but we also have in the neighborhood of 220, 230 underclassmen that we are working with at the same time. So we're not just sitting around doing our college things. We have a lot of other things going on. So it's imperative that your student maintain contact with their counselor. We prioritize packets based on application deadlines, not when the student turns them in. Okay, so there may be some students out there that are really on top of things and they get things turned in and they're several weeks before their deadline, but we have other students that are only a few days away from their deadline. We are going to make sure that those closest to the deadlines get done first before we actually do the ones that have later deadlines. Again, it's important that your student monitor their college websites and their email to find out where they are in their application status and if they are missing anything. And if the college says that they are missing something, it's important that they contact us and let us know so we can call the college and find out what is missing and get them what they need. It's a funny cartoon, and I would agree as a parent, having gone through that this year, this is very truthful. First day of school compared to the first day of college. We can't wait for them to start school, but then we don't want to see them leave home. And that's not an easy thing, but it's worthwhile in the long run. So I want to thank everybody for coming tonight. If you have any questions that have not been answered in the Padlet, or you think of things later on after this presentation is finished, we will go ahead and email your student's counselor or have your student go in and talk to their counselor, and we will answer any questions that you have. You can follow us on Twitter, and you can follow us on our Lake Braddock High School webpage, and you can follow us in Schoology under High School Student Services, where we'll be posting a lot of information throughout the year. So I want to thank everybody for joining us tonight, and everybody have a good evening.